started the recording. So we are in the eve of, we are on Thursday, and Shabbat, we're going to read the parasha of VAYECHI, which is going to be the last parasha of Chumash Bereshit, the last portion of the beginning of the Torah, I would say. And it's also a parasha which has the departure of both great people, great leaders, before Yosef, Yaakov, who passes away in Egypt, and Yosef, who also passes away in Egypt. And then next week, we're going to start the beginning of Exodus, which starts in a very, very sad, history of exile in Egypt. But in this week Torah portion, before, when Yosef hears that his father is not well, his father is sick, he says that, let me take my two children, Menashe and Ephraim, to be blessed by my father. And it's a famous story where Yosef takes them and he puts the elder one, Menashe, he puts him in his left side, and the younger one, Ephraim, he puts in the right side, with his intention that his father, when I'm facing you, my right is your left and my left is your right. So his intention was that his father will put his hands to bless the children. So the elder one, the physically aged elder one, which was Menashe, is going to be in the right hand, and the younger one, Ephraim, is going to be in the left hand. But to his surprise, his father crosses his hands.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And he immediately jumped to correct his father, say to his father, no, Dad, this one is the youngest, and this one, I put them in order by purpose. And his father said, yeah, I know what I'm doing. I know that this guy is the elder and this guy is the youngest. And the elder is going to be big, but the younger is going to be even bigger than him. So we're going to discuss this, what's the meaning behind it, because as we already have experienced, the stories of the Torah, they carry a lot of weight and a lot of lesson. That lesson which is relevant to me and you in 2026. Oh, finally I can say in 2026. And the other point which we're going to discuss that the actual blessing, okay? Because then when he put his hands, he's blessing them. He's also blessing all the other tribes, but he's giving them a blessing, a specific blessing. So we're going to drill Bezrat Hashem into the blessing, the blessing that he gives them. I see that Chen and Sylvia, they are here, but their video is not working. Okay. So
yes,
welcome. It's difficult without seeing you, but we will survive.
Okay.
So just let me know if you could see my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, Mumbai.
So in life, what we think is whoever is bigger in size and bigger in wisdom and bigger in many other things it takes preferences, right? Whoever is elderly, whoever has more wisdom, whoever. But the Torah actually stops to let us revisit this thought and rethink it. Okay? So that's going to be basically the beginning of the story. Chenji, please, from this week Torah portion, Parashat VAYECHI. Bevakasha.
After these events, someone said to Yosef, "Behold, your father is ill." He took his two sons with him, Menashe and Ephraim. Israel saw Joseph's son and he said, "Who are these?" Joseph said to his father, "These are my sons, whom God has given me in this place." He said, "Please take them to me and I will bless them." Joseph took the two of them, Ephraim in his right hand towards Israel's left, and Menashe in his left towards Israel's right, and he brought them near to him.
Okay. And again, the idea was that his father, his right will be his father's left. So this is why he put the younger one in his right, in his father's left. But then what happened? Yeah.
Israel stretched out his right hand and placed it on the head of Ephraim, although he was the younger, and his left hand on the head of Manasseh. He deliberated positioned his hands so, even though Manasseh was the firstborn. He blessed Joseph and said, God, before whom my fathers walked, Abraham and Isaac, God, who has shepherded me from my inception until this day, the angel who redeemed me from all evil, may he bless the lads. May my name be called upon them, together with the name of my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, and may they multiply like fish within the land.
Wow. Multiply like fish. That's the demand from us, right? Let's continue. What Yosef's reaction is.
Joseph saw that his father placed his right hand on Ephraim's head, and it was displeasing in his eyes. He took hold of his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head and place it on Manasseh's head. Joseph said to his father, Not so, my father, for this one is the firstborn. Place your right hand on his head. But his father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. He too will become a people, and he too will become great. However, his younger brother will be greater than he, and the fame of his descendants will fill the nations.
Wow. And therefore he blesses, he put the right hand, the stronger hand, the more right is the side of kindness, chesed, on the younger son, which is Ephraim. So obviously there is more into it, right? Joseph did not make a mistake, right? Joseph also thought that Joseph thought like we all would be thinking normally that the elder one should get the bigger blessing. And this is indeed based on the Torah, right? When we divide, when someone divides his inheritance, so the elder child, the elder son gets double the portion, right? The Bechor, the elder son, the firstborn one, get double the portion. So the Rebbe goes to explain that this is actually two different ideas, two different way of life, the way of life of Yosef and the way of life of Yaakov. Okay, and the message, that lesson that Yaakov is teaching us. Let's see.
Joseph thought that Manasseh should be blessed before Ephraim and that Yaakov should place his right hand on Manasseh's head. Yaakov, however, said to him, I know, my son, I know. I understand that your opinion is that Manasseh should come first because he is the firstborn. But my opinion is that his younger brother will be greater than he, and therefore he should come first. And that is indeed what he did.
Yeah. So what's the discussion? Like, what's going on? Okay, he thinks the elder one and he thinks the younger one. What is behind the scene? So the Rebbe continued to explain. Yeah.
The Kli Yakar explains that both Yosef's approach and Yaakov's approach have a valid basis and justification according to the Torah. First of all, the blessing in question, which Yaakov gave to Yosef and his sons, was a blessing of abundance. May they multiply like fish within the land. He proceeds to explain why Yaakov thought that this blessing should specifically be given to the younger brother.
So why in particular the blessing to multiply should be given to the younger? Okay, so the Kli Yakar, which is one of the commentators to the Torah, is a very, very refreshing, he has an outstanding, out of the box interpretation of the Torah. He explains the following. Let's see it inside. Source number 2, Kli Yakar on the verse. Yosef thoughts versus Jacob's thoughts. So Yosef, let's start with Yosef. Yes?
Yosef felt it appropriate to give the eldest son the blessing of abundance, as the eldest son receives a double portion of the inheritance. Yaakov replied,
So this is naturally in the Torah, right? Naturally, the elder one get double, so you put the elder one first. But Yaakov replies,
I know, my son, I know. repeating I know, meaning to say, I know the eldest receives double, and from this perspective, he deserves a greater portion of the blessing for abundance. However, his younger brother will become greater.
Why? Because what we are talking about is multiplying. Yeah, let's see.
For God chooses a smaller. One who has an element of smallness is lifted up by God. This occurred with all of Avram's descendants. Ishmael, Avram's eldest, was passed over in favor of Esau. Esau in favor of Yaakov. Reuben, Yaakov's eldest, in favor of Joseph. And Joseph's eldest Menashe in favor of Ephraim.
So what you can see? You could see a pattern. Starting from Avraham Avinu's kids. So his elder son is Ishmael, but who gets the blessing is his younger son, Isaac. Isaac kids, he has Esav and Yaakov. Esav is the elder, but whoever gets the blessing is Yaakov himself. Yaakov has his eldest, which is Reuven, but who gets the blessing is Yosef. And then in Yosef too, Yosef has Menashe, and then comes Ephraim, but who comes to get the blessing is purposely the youngest. So this is the pattern. This is the pattern that we could see in all the family of Avraham Avinu. Okay, so the Rebbe explained why being the youngest, or not in age, but the smaller in size, and having the element of smallness takes preferences in Judaism or by God, and therefore is blesses it. Okay, so here come the point of today. Being smaller is actually greater. Let's see.
In matters of holiness, the fact that something is externally relatively small is not a deficiency. On the contrary, God usually chooses the small, and anyone who possesses an element of smallness is elevated and raised up to become many thousands. It is specifically the smaller one who serves as a vessel for God's very essence, and it is specifically he who receives the loftiest blessings. This is indeed what occurred with Ephraim and Menashe.
Yeah, what happened? Yeah.
Ephraim was a younger one, and precisely for this reason, he was a greater receptacle of Yaakov's blessing. This is why he received the blessing before Menashe.
Yeah, so Ephraim is younger, meaning is smaller, therefore is more of a vessel to receive God's blessing. Oh, we can see you finally.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mazal Tov.
Yes.
So he is smaller, therefore is more of a vessel to receive, to be a receptacle of God's blessings. So now the Rebbe goes into the idea of humility, which humility is being smaller. Obviously, we don't speak about size. You know, who is extra large and who is medium. This is not the topic. But we're talking about people personality. And in personality, we have people with great personality, but at the same time, we have people with great personality and they still have great level of humility. And this is where God rests. So now the Rebbe is going to take a dive into this subject, which is a very important subject to everyone, but especially to somebody who wants to be a place. He wants to make space by himself for God to resonate. He wants the blessings of God, and I believe all of us want it. So what's one of the keys for God blessing is humility. Why? The Rebbe explained it now.
This idea also applies to our divine service. Regarding Torah study, it is specifically through conducting oneself in a manner of, let my soul be like dust to all, being in a state of self-effacement and smallness, to the point of being like dust, that we become a vessel capable of receiving the blessings of open my heart to your Torah.
And that's a condition, by the way. It's a condition, right? Because we say in the prayer, in the Amidah prayer, we say 3 times a day. The last paragraph that we say, the Yule Ratzon, is we say first, let my soul be like dust to all, and then the next sentence is, open my heart to your Torah. So what the Rabbi is saying is having your soul, being somebody whose soul is like dust to all with a complete humility, is a condition for somebody to be able to receive the Torah, to understand the Torah. And now the Rebbe brings a story from the Talmud of very important people who always argue, the house of Shammai and the house of Hillel, right? We came across of them numerous of time. But we know, we may like the concept of Shammai very much, but how we actually practice is like the house of Hillel. And why is it? Not because they were smarter, but because they were more, they were smaller in their own opinion, and this is how they got the merit that the law is going according to their opinion. Let's see the story. Source number 3, Chenji, it's from the Talmud.
Rabbi Abbas said in the name of Shmuel, the school of Shammai argued with the school of Hillel for 3 years. One said, the law follows us, and the other said, the law follows us. A heavenly voice called out, both are words of living God, and the law follows the school of Hillel. Now, if both are words of the living God, why does the law follow school of Hillel? Because they were gentler and humbler. They would teach their opinion and include the school of Shammai's opinion. Moreover, they would begin with the opinion of the school of Shammai before stating their own.
Wow. And this is why they got the merit that the actual law goes according to their opinion. Why? Because it's a condition, having humility. Being small in your eyes is a condition to be a place of a Torah. It's a condition that the Torah will be able to resonate within you. And now the Rebbe continues. This concept.
This concept is also relevant to prayer. It is a halakhic requirement that prayer must be carried out in a serious state of mind with submission and humility and considering ourselves as small. It is specifically through such conduct that our prayer draws down a flow of all divine blessing, extending even beyond all measures and limitations.
Yeah. So in Talmud, so we already saw that being a dust like a dust to all is a condition to open my heart, but also in a prayer, we gotta have this concept of submission and humility, that I will be small in my own eyes in order that my prayer will be actually accepted and will be affected by extracting or inviting all the blessings without limitations from above. And now the Rebbe continues to the next stage of why is it? Why humility? Until now, we only said the fact, okay? Humility is a tool in order to study the Torah, to gain the Torah, in order to gain blessings from the prayer. One of the requirements is a humility. Now, the Rebbe will explain why. Very interesting.
Humility is a vessel for all blessings. This is the overall lesson we can learn from this daily section of the Torah portion. We need to learn from Yaakov's conduct. Just as Yaakov placed Ephraim before Menashe, because of Ephraim's quality of being the smaller one, so too should we give precedence to the smallness within ourselves over the greatness within ourselves. We all possess...
And now the Rebbe explained what is smallness and greatness within ourselves. I mean, what is it? We are great or we are small? And how do you give one's preferences over the other. What are we talking about? So here the Rebbe explains.
We all possess elements of greatness. We study Torah and observe mitzvot, including in the most meticulous manner, as we have just done during Chanukah.
Right, and Chanukah, it's very interesting because when the Talmud discusses the requirement of how to light the Chanukah candles, so there are different opinions. One opinion says that it's enough to have one candle from the entire house. The second opinion says each person in the house should have one candle. And the last opinion is that everybody will light not just one candle, but every day add one candle. And in Chanukah, this is called the Mehadri. Mina Mehadri, the one who do the mitzvah not in the ordinary way, but in the most meticulous manner. And on Chanukah, what we see very interesting is that all the Jews follow this tradition. All the Jews do, not everyone lights a candle, but everyone lights a candle that is not just one candle for every day. Every day we add one more candle. So that the Rebbe says this is the idea of greatness that we have within us, that we have in our possession, the idea of greatness. The Rebbe continues, nevertheless,
there is something even more elevated that must come first. The smallness within us, let my soul be like dust to all. Indeed, it is specifically through humility and lowliness that we are able to reach high levels. As it is written, high and holy is where I dwell, and with the crushed and lowly of spirit. This means that being crushed and lowly of spirit is a vessel for drawing down God's very essence, which is beyond all forms of external revelation.
yeah,
This drawing down of God's essence also extends into revealed aspects, generating abundant and exceptional blessings for success in Torah study and fulfillment of mitzvot, including prayer, as well as drawing down blessings for material matters, children, health, and livelihood, and in all of these with expansiveness and in a manner beyond measure and limitation.
Wow. So if I want to use my own words in order to explain what the Rebbe here says, then this is a concept that is discussed over and over and over and over in Kabbalah and specifically in Hasidus, the concept of humility. Humility is a key because if you are filled with yourself, not you, if one is filled with himself, then there's no space for God. And if there's no space for God, you know, there was a great rabbi, and he was once asked, where is God? Where is God? So he said, it was once asked, where is God residing? So he answered, wherever he is allowed to, like wherever you give him a space to reside. And if one is filled with himself, with his ego, with his animalistic, selfish concept, which we all have, right? That's not something bad. This is how God created us. A baby, 2 o'clock in the morning, he's hungry, he's screaming. You know, he's not making calculation. Okay, my mother is tired. My father didn't sleep last night. He doesn't care. This is how we are created. But at the same time, when we grow and we get more mature and we get our godly soul to gain more and more and more importance in our life, so the selfless of the godliness soul should take precedent over us. And if not, if one is focused and egocentric about himself, then there's no place for anything else. Of course, there is no place for God. So the first thing that is important, it's crucial when we come to serve Hashem, is we need to pay attention to what is me, okay? That me, I need to minimize to the minimum possible. And then when I am minimized to the minimum possible, then there is space for the blessing of God. And that translates into blessings in a revealed aspect, that everything that you actually want. So there's a paradox here, right? From one end, we all want to have beautiful life, long life, healthy life. We all want to have our EMIs paid on time. We all want to have great life. Comes the Torah and tells you, you want to have great life, minimize yourself. When you're minimizing yourself, you're letting God be with you, and then all the blessings that are included in it, they also come true. So, and that lesson is a teaching that Yaakov is teaching us through the blessing of Ephraim and Menashe, where he gives precedence to Ephraim, the smaller one, over the elder one. Now, we're going to move on to the next portion of the class. And in the next portion of the class, we're going to start with the blessings that Yaakov Avinu is giving both of them, okay? Sorry, the blessing that is giving Yosef. After he blesses the two children, he gives Yosef another blessings. And then we will extract another very important idea from this blessing. Khenji, please, source number 4, it's again from this week Torah portion.
He blessed them on that day, saying, through you shall the people of Israel bless, saying, may God make you like Ephraim and Menashe. He placed Ephraim ahead of Menashe. Israel said to Yosef, behold, I am dying. God will be with you, and he'll bring you back to the land of your fathers. I have given you one portion more than your brothers, which I took from the hand of Amorites with my sword and with my bow.
Okay, so Yosef is one of the brothers. Okay, so there were 12 brothers, so they should be equal 12 tribes. But then when Yaakov sees the two sons of Yosef, when he blesses them, he gives Yosef another blessing, that your children, which are already grandchildren, they will take portions, they will be like the brothers themselves. So Yosef, in other words, instead of having one portion, he gets double portion because he has two kids. Okay, so the tribe of Menashe and Ephraim, they become like Reuven, Shimon, Levi, like any of their uncles, like any of the other tribes. So Yaakov says, I'm giving you one extra portion. This extra portion I have took from the hand of the Amorites with my sword and my bow. So Rashi come to explain what is this blessing? What's going on? What is this explanation that Yaakov says where he took this portion? So he explains the following. Rashi, 1 second. Oops. Okay. Working?
No, not here.
No.
Yes.
Here. Yeah. Now, Rashi explained the
one
following.
portion more than your brothers. The actual city of Shechem, which will be for you one share over your brothers, which I took from the hands of Amorite, from Esau, who engaged in Amorite behavior.
So this is not actually from the Amorites as the tribe, but from Esau, who actually behaved this way. So if you remember, when Jacob is coming back to Israel after being by his father-in-law in Haran for 22 years, so then he has the story where his daughter Dinah is kidnapped, and then he buys the city of Shechem, and that city of Shechem he gives his son Yosef as extra over the other brothers. So come the Rebbe to explain what is going on over here. What's the idea and what goes on over here? Very interesting. Let's see.
This is also connected to the concluding verse of the daily section of the Torah portion, which states, which I took from the hand of the Amorites with my sword and my bow. On the literal level, This refers to the land of the Amorites that Yaakov conquered, which later became the inheritance of Ephraim and Manasseh in the land of Israel. The Amorites were the strongest of the 7 nations, so it follows that conquering the portion of the Amorites includes the conquest of all 7 nations.
Wow. Why? Because the Amorites, they were the strongest of all other 7 nations. And therefore, when you speak about the Amorites, conquering the Amorites, so that includes all the other nations. So basically, in other words, Yosef is given the blessing that through him, all other nations that are now residing in the land of Israel, which we need to conquer them, they will all be conquered through the blessing to Yosef. So now we're going to go into the concept of the attributes, okay? And refining one's character. And the character of ours is also created from 7 different attributes. Let's see them, and then we will discuss to try and explain what the Rebbe means over here. Let's see.
In the spiritual sense, and in terms of our personal spiritual work, this means the following. The 7 nations, the Canaanites, the Amorites, and so on, symbolize the 7 negative character traits in the human heart, and the harshest and most harmful of these is represented by the Amorite. The spiritual conquest of the 7 nations is our work of conquering and refining the 7 negative traits of the heart and elevating them to holiness.
Wow. And continue. Let's continue a bit more, and then I'll explain.
Since the heart
Yes.
distributes blood to all the limbs, it follows that by conquering the 7 traits of the heart, our entire conduct becomes proper. In this way, we conquer the land of the 7 nations and transform it into the land of Israel, a land that desired to do the will of its creator.
Wow. So every human being has 2 operation systems in his body. One is the intellect, which is the brain, and the other is the desires, which are in the heart. We normally judge other persons and also ourselves. We are more leaning into the emotions over the intellect, right? If someone speaks nice to me, then if he speaks nice to me, it makes me feel good. So then doesn't make a difference what he says, is my friend. Okay, if someone on the contrary spoke bad words to me, even though his bad words were right, like what he said intellectually was right, but I will stray away from that person. That's in general how we feel, right? But and it's also true, right? Other people, you say, oh, this is a nice guy. This guy is very pleasant or very unpleasant to be with. Why? Because we are people of emotion more than people of intellect. It's very rare to find people who only judge by and run their operation system is purely intellectual, right? It's supposed to be, some judges and that, but it's very rare to actually find this kind of people, right? But the problem is that our emotions, first of all, the heart is the base of the animal soul, and therefore it will have desires eventually. Not eventually, naturally we'll have desires to things that are not so good. So the head, the intellect, which is on top of the heart, it's controlling the heart, needs to basically direct the heart, our desires and our emotions. It needs to direct them into the right conduct. It's not always working perfect, right? Sometimes I eat the sweets I'm not supposed to eat. Only sometimes, right? Sometimes I say a word I know I don't want to say it. Sometimes I get angry in places I don't want to be angry, etc., right? Because not always, or I should say, more often than not, the heart doesn't let the brain, or the heart leads. Okay, now the goal is that you take the heart and you convert the desires that are in the heart, those 7 attributes, right? The 7 nations that you have, each one has in ourselves, in our heart, and we transform it from being something negative to being something positive. So let's start first with what are the 7 emotions, the 7 general emotions that are actually managing us. Okay, so we have, in Hebrew it's called chesed, kindness, gvura, which is I would say toughness. Then you have tiferet. Tiferet, it's blend. Then you have netzach. Netzach is the will to be victorious. Then you have the hod. Hod is you willing to go into a fight. And then you have yesod. Yesod, it's called the hitkashrut, the connection. And then finally you have malchut. Malchut, it's to govern, to be able to communicate. Okay? So the idea is, the concept is that we're naturally born with some attributes and they are negative. And what we need to do, those are the 7 nations that are residing in the land of Israel. But the land of Israel, it's not yet the land of Israel. It's called the land of Canaan. And what we need to do through our walk in life to convert those attributes, to convert those behaviors into the Holy Land behaviors. And now we'll jump into an example from a different source. Source number 5, it's from the Rebbe's teaching in a different year, that the Rebbe explains what does it mean to refine the attributes of kindness. So there is 2 kinds of kindness. So kindness is one of our emotions that moves us, right? That operates us. So there are 2 kinds of emotion, of kindness. There is a negative kindness and a positive kindness. And what we need to do is to transform from being a negative kindness to being a positive kindness, which is only possible through what we spoke before, humility. So let's start with, what does it mean to have a negative kindness? Kindness by its nature sounds like to be kind, right? Kind is great. How can it be someone who is kind, but at the same time we call it a negative kindness that needs to be refined and needs to be converted into something positive? So let's start. Source number 5, Khenji, please.
The kindness of Ishmael, although it comes from the right side and therefore involves giving, nevertheless, that giving is for his own benefit, to display his wealth and the splendor of his greatness, and to gain a name and glory for himself. As explained in the first chapter of Tanya, based on the statement of the sages, that all charity and kindness performed by the nations of the world is only for self-glorification.
Wow.
Wow. Yep. This is not our words.
Wow.
It's explained in Tanya, but it's also taken from the Talmud, which takes it from King David, from Psalm. And the Rebbe continues accordingly. Oh, 1 second.
Accordingly, this also defines the manner and measure of the giving, that he gives only from his surplus, from his excess and leftovers. In other words, Ishmael's conduct is such that he first uses his wealth to fully satisfy all his own needs. Only after he has taken for himself and surplus remains, does he give to charity or perform acts of kindness. And even then, he is thinking about his own benefit and gain, about how this will elevate his image.
Right.
Wow. So basically, he's giving to others But in all the chain of thoughts that leads to the action and all the action himself, what is the center? Is the center. He himself is the center. So in order to glorify his own name, he's giving to somebody else because he's going to have a huge name. And the building of the hospital, that this and this family gave the money to the hospital. Now, obviously, he will only do it after he has his own mansion and his own private jet and his own private, I don't know what, land, etc., etc., etc. Then he will move on to give for somebody else in order to have his name also on his own hospital. So he's giving. This is kindness, but in his kindness, the center of his kindness, what's surrounding everything is myself. So in order to glorify myself, in order to get a better PR, a better image, I'm also going to give to somebody else. By the way, it's negative, but sometimes other people, the people in needs, they benefit from it. Okay, but still they benefit fine. I'm not saying not to do it. But even to recognize that when somebody does it, what's the root cause? It's myself. But at the same time, there is the kindness of Avraham Avinu, which the source, Avraham Avinu, it's the source of kindness. And what is Avraham Avinu's kindness look like in contrast?
In contrast.
By the way, before we move on, when the Alter Rebbe, the author of the Tanya, was arrested, he was asked 10 questions that he needed to answer them on his teaching and on his way of life and on the Tanya, and he needed to answer them in writing. So the last question, he answered all 9 questions, and the last question, the 10th one, he did not answer. So they asked, what was the question? The question is, how come that you are writing in Tanya that all kindness that nations of the world are doing are to glorify themselves? Right? This is a bold statement against non-Jews. So the story goes that the Alter Rebbe said to them, they asked him, what about this question, this answer? So the Alter Rebbe smiled. And the Alter Rebbe said to them, I answered you all previous 9 questions. Do you really want me to prove this 10th question? And they left him alone. They knew what's the answer to this question, right? So now let's move on. In contrast, what is a Jewish way of kindness?
In contrast, the kindness of Avram is of an entirely opposite nature. The reason for his kindness is that he regarded himself as immaterial, besides the point. We see this in Avram's giving to all people, even to desert nomads, stemming from his profound humility and self-effacement. He truly considered himself as dust and ashes, in a state of complete self-nullification, not sensing himself as an independent entity at all. On the contrary, he saw himself as extraneous in the world. Therefore, he gave from all that he possessed, not only from excess and leftovers, to others, leaving little for himself.
Wow. He was a secondary in this story. There is somebody in need, he gives. I know people, when you call them, the first thing they reply is, how much and when? They don't think about themselves. There is somebody else who is in need. I'm not part of the picture, right? So the Rebbe continues.
Everyone else was more important in his eyes and more deserving of good than he himself. In other words, by the very nature of kindness, there is a tendency to give and to bestow generously and without limitation. Moreover, the other comes before the self, because the giver views himself as insignificant, while seeing the value and worth of every other person, whoever they may be.
Whoever they may be, and here in Hebrew, they had on this side, 1 second, they had on this side that Avraham Avinu kindness was even to people who were not Jewish, even to Arabs. You know, he left God when God came to visit him. He said to God, I'm sorry, I have guests. Those guests, they turn out to be angels, but they were dressed like Arabs. So he said to God, I'm sorry, God. I know you're visiting me, but I am nothing. There is 3 people here in the desert that may need help, and I'm going, you'll come back another time. I'm going to take care of the guests, the non-Jewish guests, the Arabs guests. Why is it? Because everyone else take more importance than he himself. And the Rebbe continues to say that it's not only, an idea of where the kindness come from, whether it's come from a selfish or a selfless point of view. But the Rebbe says it also translates to actuality. What in the giving, how does it differ in the giving itself? Saying the Rebbe accordingly.
Accordingly, the manner and measure of his giving are such that he does not give only from surplus, but also from things that are essential to him, things he truly needs. We therefore find that the difference between the kindness of Ishmael and the kindness of the Jewish people is that Ishmael gives only from surplus, and his giving reinforces self-importance, whereas the Jewish people give from essential things, and their giving flows from self-nullification.
So we have the same action, more or less. It's kindness, but this is a kindness of a negative kindness that comes from a selfish point of view and a selfish behavior. And this kindness comes from a selfless. It comes from me being nothing, and only my entire existence is to serve somebody else. It's a self-nullification, and therefore, even when it comes on my count, right? Even when it comes on my count, I will give the other. There's a story from the family of Shem Tov that during World War II, they ran away from mainland Russia into Samarkand. In Samarkand, the war was not because all of Russia, some of Russia, at least the more inhabited parts of Russia, they were under intense war. So many of the Jews, they ran into Siberia and all these areas. And there was famine, starvation, people, there was no food. And he said one day, his father came with a treasure. What was the treasure? He found a loaf of bread. They were a family of 6 children and the parents, right? And they did not see a full loaf of bread in ages. And everybody, there was like a celebration. And their father sat and he asked the child to give him a knife. He cut the loaf of bread into 2. And he took a piece of paper, he wrapped that other half, and he told this child, take this half a loaf of bread and go to the neighbors, the Kesselmans. They did not have food in a long time. So I said, I realized we were desperate. We were in great need ourselves. But when the kindness, it's something that is rooted in yourself, not because it's going to glorify you, not because it's the right thing to do. It's because it can be us. There's no other way. The other comes before me. I see the needs of my father before I see my own needs. He says, I realize what is true kindness. True kindness is that I don't do calculation. Even if the calculation I would do, they will be a right calculation, right? If he would eat the piece of the loaf of bread by himself, it wouldn't be a sin. But nevertheless, a Jew who is a healthy Jew, I should say, There are some Jews who may not be so healthy, but a healthy Jew who is connected to his soul, who is connected, what's not just motivated, but the operation system that runs him is the brain, is the intellect, and not the emotions. He will have a kindness which will go all the way to the end. Like the Rebbe says in the Hayom Yom, in the book of Hayom Yom, that the old Hasidim used to say that a piece of bread, my piece of bread, is yours like it's mine. And they say it's yours before they say it's mine. Okay, now, so this way, okay, we only took kindness as an example, but that concept exists in all the other, and the goal is to take all those attributes that exist in negativity and refine them and convert them into holy behaviors. Okay, now the Rebbe continues to explain what does it mean that Jacob says to his son that I've taken them from the Amorites, I've taken them with the sword and the bow. What is a sword and what is a bow? What goes on over here? Let's see.
This entire idea of I took from the hand of the Amorites, the conquest of the land of the 7 nations and its transformation into the land of Israel through a person's internal work is accomplished with my sword and my bow. As explained by the Targum Onkelos, this means with my prayer and my supplication, the divine service of prayer. Hasidic teachings explain the difference between a sword and a bow.
So we are talking about how does this refining is happening? The refining of the attributes, the refining of all the behaviors, it's happening through the divine service of the prayer. So what is a sword and what is a bow? So Hasidus explain what's the difference between them.
A sword kills an enemy who is standing close by and clearly visible, but it cannot kill an enemy who is standing at a distance and concealed. A bow, by contrast, enables a person to strike even an enemy who is far away and concealed. But how does the bow reach a distant and concealed enemy? Precisely through pulling the bowstring back, lower and lower, and then releasing the arrow towards a faraway target. The more one pulls the bowstring back, the further the arrow will travel.
Yeah. We don't experience it, but we understand the concept, right? I don't think I've ever shoot a bow, but that's the concept. You pull the string, and the more you pull the string, the further and more and faster that the arrow will actually travel. Okay, so that's a bow. That's a bow. It's to reach distances and kill somebody at the distance, and a sword is killing somebody who is nearby. Whom do we need to kill? What goes on over here? So goes on the Rebbe to explain how is it related to the service, the divine service of Hashem doing a prayer.
All of this applies to the divine service of prayer as well. There are 2 types of negative forces within the human inclination. One type we feel within ourselves as an enemy that is close and revealed. There is also another type we don't feel within ourselves at all because it is deeply concealed, an enemy that is distant and concealed. This is alluded to in the verse to silence the enemy and the avenger. The enemy is the openly revealed adversary, while the avenger is a hidden adversary who schemes in secret.
Wow. Let's see another source. 1 second. No, well, let's go back. Let's go back for a second. Let's discuss it for a second. Sometimes we have in our personalities gray areas. Sometimes we even have dark areas in our personalities, but we are aware of them. I know that I'm short-tempered, for example. Okay, so it's a problem I have, but it's a problem I'm aware. So therefore, I can work on it. I can refine it. I can restrain myself not to get angry because I know that's something that I am very easy to fall into. Okay, so that's for to deal with this, with this enemy. I only need a sword, right? Because it's distant to me. I know I'm aware of it. But sometimes I have an enemy which I'm not even aware of. You know, it's very difficult to realize that about yourself, but you can about other people. Sometimes you have friends, your family, you have that they don't even aware. They're not even aware of a huge negativity, a huge problem that they have in their personality, right? Let's say, for example, somebody, or it's hard to give an example, but let's say somebody who speaks a lot and you always say, I don't like to speak, right? So you will laugh to yourself. What do you mean? You don't see your own issue, right? So that negativity, okay, it's very hard to refine because somebody who is not aware of a problem he has, okay, he cannot fix it. If I'm aware of a problem I have, then not a problem. I can fix it. I can go to the doctor and ask the doctor, listen, I'm not well. I have fever. What medication I should take? But if somebody has, for example, high blood pressure, or God forbid, a diabetic, it's called the silence killer. You know why is it called silence killer? Because a regular person is not even aware of having high blood pressure. He's not even aware of having diabetic. A few months ago, one of the guests came and he was not well. He couldn't move, this, that. I took him to the doctor. The doctor checked his blood. I think he had 450, which is, the doctor told him, listen, you're already in a level where your life is in danger. This is not diabetic. This is crazy. And that person lived, he was clueless. And that is the problem, the bigger problem. To deal with this, a sword will not be enough, but you need a bow. You need something that can reach into deeper distances. And now the Rebbe explained, how do you conquer this? To conquer
the negative force that we feel within ourselves, the enemy that is close and revealed, the level of prayer called my prayer, corresponding to the sword, is sufficient. At this level, there is self-negation. We bow and prostrate ourselves. However, this is not yet the deepest level of self-negation. To conquer the negative force that is more concealed within a person, the avenger, we must reach the level of prayer called my supplication, corresponding to the bow.
So the only thing that can help a person to refine himself, even from those negativities, even from those behaviors he's not even aware of, is do only through nullification and supplication. This is the only tool. This is the only tool that we have in our toolbox that can fix those issues. And that exactly is related to, this is how it's related to what we discussed in the beginning. The Torah teaches us that in order to, the smaller is actually bigger. The smaller, somebody who nullify himself, somebody who has, he have the highest level of self-negation is the greatest man, because then he can refine his personality into the deepest level. And source number 6, we're going to see that this is exactly connected to the bow and the arrow. Let's see.
Through prayer and beseeching God, we humble ourselves greatly, and the more humility we display, the greater the heavenly mercy we will receive. This is analogous to pulling back the string on the bow. The further back it goes, the stronger the force of the arrow will be, until the most hidden elements of the kelipa are destroyed.
Wow. So the lower you go within yourself, the more you nullify yourself, the higher you will reach. Again, this contradiction. And the Rebbe concludes this talk by saying that Hashem will actually help us, because sometimes we think, I can't get there. But the Rebbe says that Hashem will help us get into this level of humility, self-negation, and nullification. Let's see.
When we bring ourselves to the deepest and most powerful state of self-negation, submission, and humility, by pleading with God bitterly, with a feeling of profound lowliness, with heartfelt supplications that God help us against the...
Oops, 1 second. Yeah, I'm back.
That God help us against the enemy and the avenger, the negative inclination. We are thus pulling the bowstring back lower and lower. At that point, we are certain to succeed, because we have the assurance that I labored and have found, and that God helps him. Then all the interpretations of the verse to silence the enemy and the avenger are fulfilled.
And then obviously, when they are all fulfilled, then we reach the highest level, and then all the blessings and everything we dream of in our own self-development and self-enrichment, all is achieved through nullification. Okay, let's see a key point. What are the key points?
As Yaakov approaches his passing, he gives precedence and blessing to Ephraim, who is younger than Menashe, because Ephraim is destined to become greater than him. The Kli Yakar explains that the preference for the youngest son stems from the principle that in matters of holiness, self-nullification and humility are vessels for the revelation of the divine presence. The message for us, when Torah study and prayer are approached with self-nullification and submission, the learning is truly absorbed and the prayer achieves its effect. When a person adopts a path of humility, he merits greater spiritual ascent. Yaakov grants Joseph's son an additional portion in the land of the Amorites, which he conquered. In spiritual service, the 7 nations correspond to the 7 negative character traits within a person. A Jew's task is to conquer and refine these traits and elevate them to holiness. The conquest of the Amorites, which represents all 7 nations, is achieved through the sword and the bow, referring to the service of prayer. The sword corresponds to a revealed enemy, and the bow to a distant and hidden one.
And what is the goal? Just
as drawing the bowstring further downward allows the arrow to reach a greater distance, so too the deeper the self-nullification and the more abundant the supplications for help from God, the greater and more abundant the flow of God's blessing drawn down to a person.
wow. You want more? Be less. Okay, let's see what is the takeaway. We already know the takeaway, but let's see it inside.
One of the most important keys to success in life is setting aside the ego and being willing to listen to the advice of others. This applies in every area, raising children, work, and as we have learned, it is especially essential for success in serving God, in Torah study, and in prayer.
And I would say in everything else in life. But at the same time, I just want to add that I just want to add that the self-nullification, it's also a danger area. Sometimes there could be someone who is pushing away his responsibility, and he thinks that this is because of self-nullification. Sometimes there could be someone who say, I can't do it because I am nothing. But the truth is that you are nothing, but there is God who assigned you for a mission. And therefore you will be successful in your mission, not because you are something, because you are nothing. So we have to be very careful not to be ourselves. We are nothing, but God is pumping air, energy, life, blood, spirit, everything we need in order to fulfill and to achieve all the missions that He's giving us in this world. So self-nullification, yes, but at the same time, the self-nullification should not come should not lean us to be restrained then and refrain to doing what Hashem wants from us. Thank you very, very much,
Thank you,
Dr. Chen.
Thank you, Rabbi.
And